Today, we're going to make a printed wreath. So I'm using crayons and a round piece of paper, a pizza pie pan. I will also be using some markers. Notice with my crayon, I'm drawing some red circles around the edges. If you don't have a round piece of paper, you can make one. Take a piece of paper and a large plate. Put the plate upside down on the paper. Trace it and cut it out. If you want, we can also make a bow on our wreath, but you don't have to. If you want to, draw one by first starting with an oval, then 2 diagonal lines. Here's one, and then the other. It almost looks like a bird flying right towards you. Now I made a curve like a candy cane at the top. Another curve like a candy cane at the top. And now I'm going to make a line that goes from the end of that candy cane back to the beginning. End of the candy cane, back to the beginning. Now let's take 2 vertical lines that go down, one on this side, one on the other side. And then starting at my oval, I'm going to go from my oval to the end of that line I just made. There's one side of my bow. There's the other. I'm going to add a couple of little curves to show that the fabric of the bow is bent since there's a tie in it. I'm making 2 diagonal lines like a capital A, and then 2 capital A baby lines right there. Notice I didn't draw the horizontal line in between. And now I'm adding the final lines to complete my bow. Now I'm going to press kind of hard with my crayon to make a darker color. I'm using pressure by pressing down hard, and that will make the color or the value of the red a little bit darker. You can do this, or you can color lightly. Sometimes people like to make the outside edges a little bit darker and then the inside a little bit lighter. That's kind of what I'm doing. It's just a different way of coloring. You color it any way you want to. Now, when this part's finished, we're ready to do my favorite part, which is printing. So I've got regular schmegular coloring markers, not permanent, and I've got a pizza pie pan. If you don't have a pizza pie pan, you can use a sheet of aluminum foil, and I'm tracing around the circle. And if you get some lines on your paper, it's totally okay. Now I'm going to draw a circle inside to show that this is a wreath. Right now it looks like a giant donut, which actually sounds delicious. Now I'm using some green markers and doing like a loop-de-loop line, but I'm doing it where the donut or the wreath would be. I'm leaving the inside empty. So I'm doing looped lines. You could do zigzag lines. Think about the texture or the way that a wreath feels when you're adding these different kinds of lines. You are the artist. The choice is yours. When you're finished, you're going to use a spray bottle, and I have one that sprays out a nice mist of water. It works great. I'll show it to you in just a moment. There it is, and I just spritzed my pizza tray a little bit. It doesn't even look like anything's happening before carefully lowering my paper down. Notice I'm using one hand to hold the paper very still. I don't want it to move around. And while my other hand gives the paper a massage. Paper likey. Now, if a little bit of the water sneaks out from underneath the paper, gets on the back of the paper, or maybe even your fingertips, it's okay. It will wash. Peel it off and, oh my goodness, would you look at that? That is a print. Now, if you did not add a bow, we can make a bow. I'm going to get some red construction paper. I folded a little bit at the top, just about an inch or the length of my fingertip. I'm bringing down another little bit of paper, almost like I'm folding an envelope closed. And I'm going to do it one more time. Now my paper is shaped like a rectangle. I'm using the short side of my paper to make these 3 folds. Now I'm going to unfold it once, unfold it again and again, and look, I have 1, 2, 3 creases on my paper. Following those creases with my scissors, I'm going to cut along that line. These 3 strips of paper that I'm cutting out are going to be used for my bow. Once you have all 3 cut out, you're going to take one, fold it in half to create a crease. A crease is what we just made. Those are those folded lines that create a line on our paper that helps us see when we cut. So I'm going to cut along this crease. This is going to be for the bottom ribbon of my bow. I'm going to stack both of these papers together, one on top of the other, before cutting it at the bottom, making an angle. My scissors are angled to create one diagonal and another like the top of a triangle or a capital A. Look at that. I've got 2 lines. They look like little snake tongues. And with a black crayon, or you could use a marker, I'm making a dashed line, a line that kind of skips as it goes down the paper, a dashed line on the sides of that paper. That's going to be for the bottom of my ribbon. Then I'm going to do the same dashed lines on those longer pieces of paper. You don't have to use black. You could use any color you want to. I decided to use black because I thought it would show up the best. I also wanted to have a little bit of contrast. Contrast is where something really stands out, and I wanted those black lines to really show up and stand out. Once you're finished with your dashed lines, we're ready to create our bow. So the first thing we're going to begin with are those 2 short pieces of paper. So I'm going to take those and make them lean towards each other. And I'm going to take a little bit of glue and put it at the very top, which is that flat side, and put this on my wreath at an angle. And then do it the same on the other paper at an angle. And it's important to really hold those papers in place and probably count to 10. Now I want to make a ribbon at the top. So to do that, I need to add a little glue in between those parts that I was just tapping to get them to stick. So a little dot of glue and hold. The longer you hold, the more likely it will be to stay. If it comes apart when you let go, it doesn't always mean it needs more glue. It means it needs more grab time. So you just have to hold it to allow the glue to grab a little longer. I put a little glue at the bottom or the back of that paper before adding it to the top of the ribbon. And now I'm doing the same thing to the other side. Can you guess where this piece of paper is going to be glued? Well, right now, if I move my big old hands out of the way, it would look kind of silly because I only have one ribbon glued down. So this one is going to go on the other side. Now, I could say that that's finished, but I thought the middle of the ribbon looked a little strange. So I got my red construction paper out again and I drew a very large circle. You could also trace something like a quarter. That would probably be big enough for you to trace and then cut slowly so that you have a nice round circle. Then with my handy dandy black crayon again, I'm going to add those dashed lines around the edges to create that stitched line. Now, if I'm going too fast, because I really am, or you missed a step, you can always pause. You can always rewind to catch up. Now, my printed wreath, I have 2 kinds. I have one where I collaged or I cut and glued a 3D ribbon, which is cool, and then one where I drew it and printed. Have fun, friends. Toodles!